Today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with Gail Ward Olmsted, author of Katharine's Remarkable Road Trip. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
It is so wonderful to have you. Before we get into the book, which I found fascinating, why don't you let listeners know what they're going to find when they open the pages?
All right. Katharine's Remarkable Road Trip is a fictional journey based on the life of an amazing woman. I'd call her remarkable, but that would be probably a little corny.
Redundant.
I first came across her when I was doing research for an earlier historical novel, and I just made a note to myself to find out more about this woman. So it's really, like I said, it's 1 week in the life of an amazing woman where she reflects upon some of her accomplishments, some of her regrets, meets old friends, new friends, as she travels by herself from Newport, Rhode Island to Jackson, New Hampshire, a journey of about 300 miles, which in 1907, for a 77-year-old woman traveling alone was quite a journey.
Yeah. So that answered one of my questions, which was, did she really do this road trip?
I know she traveled frequently between those locations.
Okay.
I would say more often than not, especially earlier, it was by train, occasionally with friends. I can't say that she ever made the road trip solo.
All right. But she is a real person.
Times.
Right? So she is a real person, though.
Oh, real person. Yeah, amazing person.
So tell me a little bit then about the research, because in order to have this fictional road trip of her going across, these 300 miles, you had to have certainly done a remarkable amount of research to understand her, to be able to have all of those little escapades that she had in those days that she was gone.
Yes. It was the hard part really was to at some point just say, okay, you've done enough research, start writing. I never thought I would find research all that fascinating, but I really did. Like I said, I had done part of it with an earlier book. So I had a sense of the time, the culture, the social mores of the day, if you will.
Right.
So that made it, that gave me a base or a foundation to work with. But the more I found out about Katharine herself, I just was blown away by all that she had accomplished. And it was, like I said, it was remarkably easy to find all kinds of good information. I found letters she wrote, letters that were written to her. She's mentioned in the who's who of American women in a number of different publications. There have been books written about her, not a novel like I wrote, but so it was really easy to find so much information. I had to at one point just stop myself and say, stop reading.
I know.
Start reading.
That will happen to me. And I call it, falling down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
Where you get this information and I'm finding the research to be so interesting and satisfying, right? And you keep looking, and then you look somewhere and you think, okay, this will be the last thing I look at. And when you look at it, you find a new piece of information and you think, ooh, I do have to know about that. And then down that rabbit hole you go, right?
Right.
I think that's one of the hardest things, especially when doing any kind of like historical fiction, anything with a historical thread through it, is when do you have enough?
Right. Right.
Because the truth is I'm sure you learned way more than you put in the book.
I did. And it was, hard to kind of winnow out the information that I thought, well, this doesn't really tell anything more about her personality or about her, the way she viewed her life, because this book is written at the near the very end of her life. So she has a lot to reflect on. I needed to, I wanted to keep it entertaining, informational, and most of all, just, shine a light on someone who I came to admire.
Right. I loved her arc. I mean, here she is at the end of her life. And so you kind of feel, I think in general, people say, okay, someone at that point in their life, what's the arc? They're done.
Right.
There's nothing else. And yet what we find is that through this 1 week journey, she's gone for, was it a week?
Yeah,
right?
six nights overall.
6
Yes.
nights. Okay, so she's gone for these 6 nights. She goes these 300 miles, and in it, she continues to learn about herself.
Yes. Yes.
And she continues to give of herself, and she realizes how much value she has, despite the fact that she's just learned from her doctor news. We never hear exactly what the news is, but we know that she's got news, and the news has led her to believe that life is coming to an end pretty quickly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so we know she's moving to the end, and she knows it, and yet it isn't an end of life story.
Oh, no, not
Right?
at all. No,
I
not
mean,
at all.
it's far more I don't know, I looked at it almost as a you continue to live. You have the opportunity to continue to live and grow and develop and teach right up until the very end.
Right.
Right.
Right. I found in reading her letters and in reading what people had to say about her, her close friends, her colleagues, people that knew her very well, she seemed to be a lifelong learner. She seemed to be open to new ideas, new challenges, new people. She really wasn't, kind of the stereotypical set in her ways, old Yankee woman that's
Right. Well, and not even just that, but old maid.
Yes. Oh,
right.
Yes. Yeah.
So in 1907, to be a 77-year-old woman who'd never been married, what you expect is someone who dresses frumpy and sits on their front porch and knits and nags at the neighbors, and that's right.
And judges people for
yeah, and you don't expect a whole lot else, and instead what we get is this woman who is educated and vibrant and who has done unbelievable things for her time period as a woman. These things would be unbelievable today. They are unbelievable for 1907, right?
Yeah,
for the
they really are
accomplishing. And yeah, I loved that about her. And I feel like maybe that's one of the lessons you want people to get from this story as they're reading, not just learn about Katharine, but to kind of come up with that understanding about maybe themselves.
And talk to people that have so much to share, have so much you can learn from. I think a lot of times our society, we put a more of an emphasis on youth and developing the youth and helping them to come along in their lives. But senior citizens have had amazing experiences.
Exactly.
I mean, the things she lived through and the things that she participated in were valuable, and you can still learn a lot today from some of those, some of the way she looked at things, the way she jumped in and got involved and tried to make a difference.
Exactly. And so the whole way across, her 300 miles, she runs into people because she is traveling alone.
Yes.
But she plans these stops, and at every stop, and some of them are unplanned, when the tire blew and those kinds of things, she makes these stops and she meets people, and every person she meets, she has something of value that she can pass on.
Yes. Yes.
And I loved that idea, but I also loved what she was learning from them as well.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And
she had an open mind, but yet she, if asked, she would give her advice or give her opinion on things. Sometimes even if not asked. I loved when she gave marriage advice to a young newlywed. That was one of my favorites.
I loved that too, because as a woman who's never been married, here's this young newlywed with a baby, and so she's exhausted. And, and here stands Katharine at 77, never married, no children. And she's giving this absolutely wonderful advice. But
where was she 30 years ago?
Yeah, but she's basing it on the things that she learned about life. And just because you haven't been married doesn't mean you haven't been exposed to marriage. Right. And so she kind of had some good ideas. I also liked the fact that, she was not your stereotypical old maid. And I particularly liked her exploits with men.
Yes.
Like, I found it interesting because that shattered a stereotype for me. as I'm reading this book, because the first time you mentioned how she'd been in love, I was expecting to hear that she'd been in love and that it ruined her. And then after that, then she just, and instead you find out there's married men and there's lovers and there's, and it was like, whoa, this is not stereotypical. And I loved that too, because I think that we just as humans put people into these boxes and we make assumptions. Oh, if you're 77, then this is what you are.
Right.
And the closer I get to 77, by the way, the more I don't believe that's true.
You and me both.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. My mother just turned 82. And when I was a child, my mom was 21 when she had me. And when I was a child, my mother was old. I remember her being old. I was 10. My mother was an old woman. She was 31. I thought she was old, right? My mother is now 82 and I don't feel she's old at all. And I just wondered how that, how does that happen in our minds?
I hear you. It seems true to me as well. The age, the 21 years difference between you is not that much anymore.
No, it
at
doesn't.
Point, it was huge.
Yeah. I mean, it used to just really be this ginormous gap. And now we're more contemporaries than we are anything else.
Right.
I mean, I have friends her age here in my neighborhood that we go play bridge and we do other things. And it's like, it doesn't, it's crazy. And so I really liked that idea that the old maid, the old maid in my mind was someone who was maybe not terribly pretty or not terribly smart or something was obviously very wrong with them. And they ended up taking care of their mother until they died. And then they lived on their front porch until they died. Like, I know that sounds terrible, but you just kind of have this idea in your mind, right? Yeah, and then you just kind of like threw that out the window with this book. And I loved it. I thought that was really great.
Oh, I'm glad. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your writing process. Like, are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? Do you write every day? Do you have to be in a certain spot? Do you have to have a certain cup of tea? Like, how does this go for you?
I'm probably a hybrid pantser and plotter. I do like to have a general outline, not of the ending, but just of kind of the story arc, the way I see it unfolding. But I like to keep an open mind to really let the characters kind of direct the action. So like I said, so kind of a hybrid, but no, I don't have any special. I usually write, on my laptop. My handwriting is so bad. If I make a note to myself, I'm looking at it saying, "What is this?"
Yeah, I'm the same way. I have horrific. People have said, "Oh, it's so much better to write it down." And it was like, "Oh, if I wrote it down, I'd have to reinvent it later because I'd have no idea what I put there."
Exactly. So I always work on my laptop, and it's usually on my desk, looking out the window, or sometimes sitting up in bed. In the later hours with, just typing away. And I like to get a first draft done that I feel good about before I start sending it out to my early readers for their thoughts. And let me just tell you, or let me give advice to anybody that's listening, that's thinking of writing. Build in the time to get that feedback from your early readers. And it shouldn't be, well, in my case, it's not anybody that's related to me. It's not even my closest friends. They're people that like the genre, will provide you with, feedback, will take the time. They're not doing you a favor. They're not getting paid. They're doing it because they love the genre and they want to support your writing. But build that time in, because it is it's so valuable to get that feedback.
I think that getting feedback in whatever way works for you is so valuable, because as a writer, the characters live in my head. I know them. I know the story. I know what they would have for breakfast in the morning. I have that all. And when I'm writing, sometimes I fail to provide some of that information because it seems so obvious to me. Right. And so when I'm reading back over my manuscript, it's all there because it's all here.
Right.
And then you get another reader, and they look at it and it's like, well, Terry, I don't know about XYZ. And I'm thinking, well, how can you not know that?
How can you not know that?
It's so obvious. And then I go back and I read and I think, well, it could be because I never put it down and you would have no clue because.
Right.
So it is really, I think it's really valuable as an author, you can't fix what you don't recognize as missing.
Right. Yeah.
And you don't recognize it
because,
like I said, yeah, the characters are alive in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're my friends. We have been speaking for, weeks and weeks and months. Right. And they're in there and yeah, like, how can you not know? So I do agree that is very valuable. Do you edit as you go, or do you like to get a first draft of your own and then go back and edit?
I do edit as I go to a certain, sometimes honestly, I'm not in the mood to write. I'm more in the mood to read back and just say, wait, how did I leave this? Because if I'm jumping ahead, was she already home or is she on her way home? Or so right. I want to go back and read. And that's when I find things that, not so much like typos or anything like that, but just holes, Right. I had an editor once. Her name is Anna Bennett. She was wonderful. I loved her. She retired because she had a baby and she didn't want to edit anymore. But she told me once about, she views it as a tapestry with ribbons or fabric or yarn that's you're trying to weave through the entire story. Right. And she said, if you leave something, doing a horrible job of explaining what she said so beautifully, but if you leave something that's just a loose end, that's not fastened down, it leaves a hole in the story. Right. And so she was really wonderful about looking for those loose ends. Right. And I think I try to find them as I go. And then again at the end, and then my beta readers tell me, oh, no.
Yeah, you didn't get all of them. Here's a few more. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I have the tendency to do what I just call word vomit, which is I get the story out. I just sit and I write and I write. I tend to, if in my preferred world, I'm not in that right now. I'm having to write very differently right now. But in my preferred world, I would love to take 2 weeks, nobody bother me, and I'll write 50,000 words. Like I'll go on a retreat and I'll just sit down and I'll write it from start to finish. It's not really from start to finish, but the story is now on paper. And then I leave it alone for a little while and I pick it back up. And that's when I start looking for the holes. And I make notes about, okay, this needs to be done and this needs to be done. And then I go back and do that first big edit. And now I have a tapestry that I might be willing to show someone.
Okay. And where would this take place just for this 2-week retreat? Just curious.
There's a place in North Carolina and it's called Weymouth. And they allow North Carolina writers, you can come in for up to 2 weeks. And I love it because they give you a bedroom and a shared kitchen. And there's up to 3 other authors there at the same time. And there's nothing else. It sits on several hundred acres. It's beautiful gardens. The home is open to the public during the day. So the downstairs is open. We're in the upstairs. And in the evenings when it's closed, you have the whole mansion. And it is fabulous. It is fabulous.
It sounds amazing.
And so I wasn't able to do that one time. And instead, I had a friend who had a place at the beach. And I used her place at the beach. And I did the same kind of thing where I just get away. I don't do it as well at home because there's pressure at home. People need me. That the laundry has to be done and people expect to be fed and all of those things, and it's hard because you're just getting into it and then something beeps in the background and they need you. Right. And so you have to stop and then you come back and then you stop and you come back. And it's hard then to really ever get into a flow. But when I go to one of these retreats, a week or two, I can get out an amazing amount of words because it would be gross to anyone else, but I might not shower for 4 days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's
Like
the
I'm just
life of
sitting
her. Yeah.
and I wake up and I write and then I eat when I'm hungry and I sleep when I'm tired and I don't really care about the clock or anything else. And then the end of the time and it's like, well, look what I've got. And then I can go back to being a human.
Right. Oh, that actually sounds pretty wonderful. I think I might be moving to North Carolina now. So neighbor.
Yeah, no, so I think that there are other places like that around. You should look into writers' retreats.
Right.
There are a lot of places that do, like classes and those kinds of things. I don't want something like that. I want to be left pretty much alone.
Me too.
I would be willing to go to one that maybe had like a mandatory dinner time where everybody got together at one time and we all sat down to a communal dinner.
Yeah,
I could handle that. But I don't want, from 10 to 12, we have this and you can write from 12 to 2 and then from 2 to 4. I don't want,
Right.
leave me alone.
Right.
Because I like those kinds of retreats. They're really great. They're really
It sounds
great.
wonderful.
So Gail, what is coming up next for you? What are you writing now?
Well, I am back to my contemporary fiction. I just finished a trilogy. Miranda Quinn is a disgraced district attorney who's seeking a career comeback. So I wrote three books featuring Miranda, and the third one just came out last week in December. So
Congratulations.
But I developed a new character in the third Miranda book, and I got so much feedback from early readers saying, this is a spinoff. This is a great new character. And I decided to go for it. So I'm finishing up the first draft of another novel. It's more women's fiction, a little bit of a legal thriller, but not really a thriller.
Yeah.
Featuring a young law student named Lennon. So so I'm
Fantastic.
kind of all of I get the question a lot about going back and forth from contemporary to historical fiction, and I what I always say and how I see it is, I like writing about women in challenging situations, quirky women with interesting habits or backstories, and the fact that they're it's the 2020 or it's 1820. To me, things haven't changed all that much.
I know.
And the challenges we face are not all that different from the challenges our great-great-grandmothers faced.
Exactly.
So although it's different in terms of needing more research or needing more historical accuracy, the thought process, the things that go through their minds, the challenges they face really haven't changed. So I like writing about second chances and starting over and do-overs and all that kind of good stuff. And again, whether it's, if I find a woman from 200 years ago, she'll be my next
Right.
book.
I love hearing that, because right now I have written 3 that are out that they consider them historical fiction. One of them's 1970s, and that hurts my heart a little that's
Please, that breaks my heart too.
Yes.
So,
but anyway, so but I have a 1970s, I have a World War II, I have an 1890s, but the one I'm currently writing is contemporary. Mm-hmm. And it's a very different story. It's completely different. And I tell people that I actually write character-driven fiction. If you like a good character, if you like an arc, if you like to really dive in and get to know who that person is, then come along with me for the ride, because you're going to like the story. The one I'm writing right now is about a woman going through menopause, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, funny, she can't find her cell phone because she's put it in the refrigerator and she has hot flashes at all the wrong times kind of thing that simply would never have worked in 1890. It wouldn't have been a story then.
Right. You would just suffer in silence.
You just suffered, and that's just what you did. And instead, this is a kind of sarcastic, cheeky. I love her. She's fun. I think she's everything I wished I could be sometimes, and she has a little bit of my sense of humor, and it's just fun to write. And I've been a little worried about this idea that I've got people following me who've been reading my historical fiction, and now I have this completely different idea.
Yeah.
And my hope is that it will be okay.
I think if you're clear in terms of the cover, the title, the book description, that this is, this is what it is. That
What it is,
modern,
right. I'm not trying to lie to anyone and make them think they're getting historical fiction, right.
Yeah.
But I love that idea. I think that for a long time, authors felt like they had to be put in a box, and that if you started out with a thriller, you always had to write a thriller, and that's just where you were going to be. And you didn't ever have the opportunity to break from that box unless you had become so uber famous.
Like Stephen King, he can go from different.
Right. There are a few out there that can do what they want.
Right.
But I think in today's world, we're starting to find that more and more authors are saying, I have stories.
Right.
And I want to tell them. And I can't help it that my brain came up with a story that's not a thriller today. So instead, I'm going to write whatever I write.
Right.
So,
right. I fully agree. I fully agree. And I thought with my first historical novel, should I change my name? Should I do something? And I just thought, get over yourself. Because first of all, not that many people read your first 4 books that were contemporary. So I don't think anybody's going to be saying, what?
Oh, no.
And I was right. They didn't. So I just kept my name.
Well, and someone asked me about that too. And I said, I have a hard enough time keeping up with myself. I can't imagine keeping up with me and then someone who's me,
an alter ego or
2.0, like, oh, thank you. No, I there's no way, because then you have double the social media and double the marketing and double the website stuff and double the
pass.
Hard pass.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, guys, if you are having fun with this conversation and would like to continue, head on over to the Novels and Latte book club on Facebook. There you'll have an opportunity to win a digital copy of Katharine's Remarkable Road Trip by Gail. Gail, if someone wanted to reach out to you, find out more, learn more about your books, how do they do that?
Sure. The best, I had a website for the longest time, and honestly, maintaining it and trying to keep it fresh and updated was just one of those challenges. Maybe one of these days when I stop writing books, I'll focus on that. The easiest way to reach me is through email. It's gwolmsted@gmail.com. And you can find that on, or look on my Facebook author page. There's usually updates on there.
And I'll have that in the show notes so that anyone who's looking will be able to click right on it.
Yeah.
Gail, thank you so much for being with me today. I had such a great time, and the book is wonderful, guys. So run right out and buy it.
Thank you very much, Terry. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.